Well, hello everyone. I am going to be doing our Friday education on managing priorities, not time. And the reason I chose this one, I don't know when the last time we did it. It might have been not that long ago, but I feel like we're in a season of kind of busyness. There's a lot going on, a lot tasks on us, and our to-do lists are just kind of getting larger and larger, which isn't a bad thing, but it's important to refresh on this topic of managing priorities, not time, because if you don't, it can start to feel very overwhelming and stressful, and it just feels like you can't get everything done. But maybe it's just the way we are looking at our to-do list that's the reason we're not, we're feeling that way. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate, we have a lot of big goals we're working towards, and we have a lot of new deals coming in the pipeline. But then on top of that, we have our personal life. Kids are going back to school. There's, laundry to do, and life is just getting busy. So I want to walk you guys through some steps I feel like would give everyone more peace of mind on how to handle this. And I hope this kind of motivates you to think about it in a different way. So the Webster's Dictionary definition of priority is something given or meriting attention before competing alternatives. Our Integrity Capital definition of managing priorities, not time, is our firm means, or managing priorities for our firm means being intentional and planning out your day to be focused on the things that have the most impact in your position, department, for that moment and or season. So like I mentioned before, it's a busy season, so we just got to kind of keep this in mind. What it is not. Managing priorities does not mean you can get everything done, but only the things that have the highest impact of importance. This also does not mean someone can continue not getting things done and not be able to clearly account for why they didn't. The phrase that sticks out to me in this kind of definition is the highest impact. And I think it's important to just keep that in mind, that we're looking for the things that have the highest impact in our roles. And so I just encourage you, as we kind of journey through these slides, keep that in mind in your particular position. What are those things that have the highest impact in your position? The manifestation, according to Integrity Capital, is someone who is managing priorities well, has their day, week, month laid out in advance. They have clear goals and know what it takes to accomplish them for the allotted time. They are focused to drop the things that are not priorities fast and to be laser focused on the things that have the greatest ROI. This person is productive, not just a busybody. They are focused, not frantic. They have clarity versus confusion. They are in the business of disqualifying people who don't align with our convictions, so they can best serve while maintaining the value of people's personhood versus perspectives. Okay, so I'm going to kind of read a little narrative from this website I got. It's 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, and you already are behind on your to-do list. You have 3 projects due today, and you'll only finish them if you get moving pronto. So you start with the most straightforward task, checking your email. But as soon as you open your inbox, you realize you still need to reply to an important email from Friday. Then you notice a reminder for a 10 a.m. meeting that you still need to prepare for. And to top it off, your phone is ringing. So I'm sure many of us have been in situations similar to this, maybe in the past, maybe just recently. It feels like we can be juggling on a lot of things. And, I actually kind of had a conversation with Lana this week, and I was like, yeah, like and Tom, I think I was like, I feel like I'm kind of all over the place right now, just in today, because, random phone calls and trying to do a bunch of different things. So I definitely could relate to this. And then Erin Rupp, who was, this is kind of the article I got a lot of this information from. She said, we have a hard time managing it all. It's not because we aren't capable or don't have enough time. It's because our brains weren't built to handle many tasks simultaneously. And maybe some of you have heard this before, but our brains can't multitask. It's kind of a, like, when people say that, it's actually not true. And in fact, researchers Kevin Medor and Anthony Wagner explain that multitasking is almost always a misnomer, as the human mind and brain lack the architecture to perform 2 or more two or more tasks simultaneously. By architecture, we mean the cognitive and neural building blocks and systems that give rise to mental functioning. We have a hard time multitasking because of the ways that our building blocks of attention and executive control inherently work. To this, when we attempt to multitask, we are usually switching between one task and another. The human brain has evolved to single tasks. And Dave's mentioned this before, but just that's why it's so critical to know that one thing. Like when you're trying to focus on lots of things at one time, your brain's just switching back and forth between them. So it's important to find that one thing to focus on and really hyper focus so you can get it done. And there's actually a lot of dangers of multitasking or attempting to multitask. The three they kind of explained here is it reduces accuracy and quality because your memory may be impaired if you rapidly switch between tasks, which results in response times being slower and more errors on the second task. The second one is increased time on task. According to some research, it takes nearly half an hour to regain focus after switching tasks, reducing your efficiency and productivity. And then the third thing is it increases stress levels. Multitasking or attempting to multitask impairs the nervous system, resulting in both emotional and measurable physiological stress. So what can we do? I think that it's important to really consider these things, and it's going to be so different for everyone, but these are a good like baseline. And there's 7 ways to manage tasks and accelerate productivity. I actually was doing some research, and there's this website called Able, and they had a lot of really good articles on just how to find success in your role and manage your priorities. And if you guys want to see any of those later on, I can send them to you because they're super interesting, but we'll dive into it right now. And I have some questions at the end, but I kind of wanted to go through a few of these slides first. Okay, so step 1 is to create a primary to-do list. This is as simple as it sounds. You just jot everything down, everything that's on your to-do list. And the biggest key to this one is to keep it simple. Don't overthink it. Secondly, prioritize your tasks. So now that everything's written down on a to-do list, whether this is on, like Asana or a piece of paper or your Outlook to-do list, which it's important to kind of keep it in one place, you should begin to categorize these things by asking some questions like, does this task align with my long-term goals? Is this task time sensitive? Is this task a high priority or lower priority? Is this something, this is something that you should do on a like Friday afternoon or Sunday night or Monday morning. It's not something that you're going to be doing every day, that you're going to be writing these to-do lists out and then categorizing them. It's like something more that's done at the beginning of the week, so you're preparing for the week ahead. And I think this makes the tasks seem less like busy work and more like you're really planning ahead for success. And I know Dave's mentioned this to me before. I'm sure you guys have seen this model. It's called the Eisenhower matrix. Dwight Eisenhower, which was the 34th president of the United States, kind of came up with this technique, and then it was later redefined by Stephen Covey. But essentially there's 4 quadrants. There's the urgent and important quadrant, not urgent but important, urgent but not important, and not urgent and not important. But I love the picture to the right, because I think this explains kind of the action item on how to, like, once you put your to-do list in these different quadrants, the picture on the right is like how you actually apply it to your life. And I think the biggest one is like that delete box. I'm sure there's so many things like we do that really we can probably just delete out, that would actually free up some time. But I would love to kind of hear from you guys. Do you have examples of what you might think, like what you think would go in one of these categories, or something that you've discovered lately that you're like, oh, this could actually probably go in the, not important and urgent box, or this is something I could delete?
I can't think of anything currently that I would, that I put in, to like the delete box. But I can say that I used to plan my day using this. When I was in your role, Mackie, I used this and it helped me immensely. Because there was things that I would, think, okay, well, this belongs in like that delete box. I'm just not, I don't need to do it. And it was in a way, kind of like refreshing, knowing that you did do the task, like you looked at it and you thought about it and you knew what to do with it. Or if you had something that was important but not urgent, you could still had a space to write it down. And it was like it took the pressure off because you're like, okay, I've got a spot for that. I know that it's not urgent and I've addressed it. And so I like this Eisenhower matrix. I didn't know it was tied to President Eisenhower. I didn't know it was called an Eisenhower matrix actually. So that's interesting. But yeah, no, I like this 4-quadrant matrix.
Yeah.
I do too. I'm doing this all day. I would say there are many instances where I might get some, piece of information that I'm like, oh, that's an interesting article, or maybe it's something I could read. And a lot of times I'll just quickly go, no, delete. Just because I'm like, I don't think it's that relevant as I thought it is, and the chances of me reading that later is probably slim to none. So I just have recognized that about myself now, that I'm just going to delete it, and just not respond to it. And then even in like emails that are sent to me that I'm like, I'll find myself like, oh, I'm going to respond, and then I'm like, nah, I can do that later. Like I don't need to do that now. That's just not the priority right now.
Right.
So yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. So now that we've laid it all out and we've organized, like these are where the tasks fall into kind of my priorities for the week. The next kind of step is to use like a task management method to plan wisely. And what I mean by this is kind of what they call task batching, or also known as time blocking. And I have an example of somebody who does this very well, which would be David Cotter. He has nailed this. If you ever look at his calendar, it is like time blocking. It inspires me to block out more of my time. But essentially what this is it's setting aside specific time to do similar tasks all at once instead of doing tasks as they come up. So you just, you're thinking about, you could, as emails come in, you could just keep on responding to those as they come in, and then you get a call and then you do that. Like you're not going to get the major priorities done for the week if that's how you function. But when you're allocating certain time for to do this one project, and then maybe spending 25 minutes responding to the emails and then going to another project, it's important to do that. And by doing this, it actually reduces procrastination by eliminating decision fatigue. And then the last point I want to make is research shows, and I know I mentioned it like kind of around a half hour, but in this article it says that research also shows it takes 23 minutes to return to your original focus after being interrupted. So by task batching, you can stay more focused on the one thing that you should be working on at that moment. And then the fourth step is to use a time management technique to optimize your workflow. So similarly, you have all these kind of time batches blocked out in your calendar. Well, you need to make sure you allot enough time to do these things, because you could set, just like 10 minutes to respond to emails, but in fact, it could take you about a half hour to do that. So you don't want to, incorrectly block out, like you don't want to not block off enough time to get those tasks done. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of the, might pronounce this wrong, but Pomodoro technique. And it was actually named after a guy by the name of Francisco Cirilli, I think is how you say his name. He created the tomato kitchen timer, and Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. So what this technique essentially says is you have it breaks your work down to 25-minute intervals. So after every 25-minute interval, you take a 5-minute break, and then you keep repeating it over and over, like throughout your workday. If a task requires more than 25 minutes, they recommend, you figure out how many Pomodoros you will need in order to accomplish that task. So maybe it'd take 2 Pomodoros, so, about an hour to complete the task. But the key here is having those short kind of 5-minute breaks in between as well, to give yourself time to kind of like reset and then kind of get focused back in the next Pomodoro. And then the 5th step is to reduce distractions and enhance focus. There are so many distractions nowadays. We have text message, phone calls, social media, ads online, food, pets, people in the office talking, and all of the above. So some helpful ways that they recommended in this article is to like turn on your do not disturb on your phone, or silencing notifications if you're in like a really focused time block and you're trying to get something done. Some people recommended wearing like noise canceling headphones, or even playing white noise has been shown to help people focus more. I was curious, have you guys experienced like major distractions, and if so, what do you guys do to help avoid those distractions?
I've got Dave Cotter in my office. That white noise thing. When I was at Wells, they used to play white noise throughout the whole office on one floor only, and I think it was supposed to designed to like help you focus, but also to like reduce conversations from going across the room. And I don't know if I liked it, because it was like you constantly heard like a fuzzy sound in the background. So I've heard of that, like that white noise technique. But I do find that if I need to focus on something, like music will help me focus.
Yeah.
Because as long as it's not too loud. But if I have to put on some headphones quickly and play some music while I focus on something, I find that oddly that keeps me on task. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually will do a similar thing where I'll put some headphones on, and then put some music on, whether it's smooth jazz or whatever it is that doesn't have words, and then I can really focus and not have those distractions, but just give my full attention to it. So that's one of the ways. And then I did end up buying a phone arresting system a couple of weeks ago that I put my phone in, and it locks it for 7 hours or whatever, 8 hours, whatever that's. So yeah, so that's another way.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm also on the I listen to music to stay focused on my objectives, and fortunately I work just me here, so there's no headphones, just me and the music. But I also, to the other point of your question with like distractions, I typically find that my phone going off is my biggest distraction, just with notifications from messages or social media or anything like that. But I also find it difficult to put my phone on do not disturb, because I also use my phone for work things too. So it can be kind of 50-50 there. But whenever it comes to things that I'm like, okay, I really need to focus on this task, I can't get interrupted on it, then I'll usually use do not disturb and just try to get my phone out of my sight.
Yeah, that's good. I think there's this, maybe you already have used this, but the Apple has that new update where you can do the do not disturb, but you can do it work mode, so you get work notifications, but then not other notifications. I haven't dove into it yet, but that would be something to kind of look into and see once if it works well and whatnot. But good. Well, the 6th step is to take breaks, and we kind of mentioned this in the Pomodoro technique, but essentially what I wanted to highlight here is Breaks are important for maintaining focus and to help avoid burnout. So just as it's important to focus when you're working, it's also essential to take breaks when you need them. So if you're feeling like you're super overwhelmed with multiple tasks, maybe just step away from your work to take a few minutes to yourself. I've talked with Dan about this before, and he says sometimes he'll just take, like a lap around, like, or just get up and walk for a second and then kind of come back, and your brain just kind of refreshes. And so just a couple of you, if you want to answer, do you guys have anything in mind that helps you kind of with that, gives you that peace and kind of break from work when you're kind of feeling overwhelmed, or you just need that? What does your go-to break look like?
My go-to break is I started playing piano and trying to learn to play it. So whenever I'm going to take a break, I'll just go and play like a song for 5 minutes or something, and just kind of take the time to refocus, because I'm not focused on anything else, but just trying to get through the song.
That's awesome. That's super
That's a
cool.
great idea. Yeah, I just go for a walk. I mean, I'll just go. That's what kind of why I like where we're at. It just, I'll go walk outside or just change up the scenery. So sometimes it just helps to like the break and then change the scenery and try to go to the coffee, just something that's different. A lot of times will be how I can take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take a break and I'll just take the dog outside, just to, some point he's gonna have to use the bathroom anyway.
Yeah.
I've thought now that with the laptop, thought about going and working outside, and then I remember it's 110, so once it cools down,
Right.
once it cools down, that might be a nice option too,
Yes.
to change up scenery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's different for everyone too, right? Like what kind
Yeah.
of, and that's cool that Lana, you play the piano. It's like a really creative outlet, and probably just gives you that time to focus on that. And like for me, it's even just like, I just like sitting inside, like in the sun, and just soaking in like the sun rays. It just kind of refreshes me. And then, kind of come back inside all refreshed and rejuvenated. So the last step is to stay flexible. And I thought this was super interesting because I think it's oftentimes maybe overlooked or forgotten in the equation of this. But it's really important if you think about it, because life is constantly throwing us curveballs. You could have your whole week laid out, and then there's going to be things that don't go according to plan. And if you're not willing and able to be flexible and adapt to what's coming your way, it could be really, really frustrating and just throw you off and change your mood. So it's important to realize, like, the plans you have in place, they might not go according to your plan, but just to have those there and to have that structure is so good. It's just important to also be flexible to changing maybe the way you are doing things. Maybe this plan that I just went over, you've tried multiple times and it just doesn't work. So it maybe will take looking into another task management system that works better for you, or a way you take down your to-do list that works better for you. So just being flexible to find a new path or direction to help you stay organized. And then I found this quote that I really liked. It says, managing your time is about fitting in whatever comes your way as best as possible. Managing your priorities is about deciding what matters the most and allocating time to those tasks. And that was from Dr. Greg Wells. I love this just because I think, again, it's kind of highlighting that it's the priorities is like what matters to you most, and allocating time for that. Like when you're just trying to squeeze everything in and get everything done, you're not hitting the priorities and the high important items. So, and then lastly, just a couple of questions, and you guys don't all have to answer these, but maybe just like look them over. And then if you want to answer one of them, I would love to hear from you guys if you had any takeaways or any, what you think your biggest hurdle is when you're trying to complete tasks. And you find yourself trying to, in quotes, multitask, because you really can't multitask.
Yeah, I think for me, love the Pomodoro technique. I think that's a great, it reminds me of Michael Hyatt in one of his books that talked about, done studies on investment bankers, they work 80, 90 hours a week or whatever. And they realized that when they took another batch of group that only worked 40 hours, they were actually more productive than the 80-hour week person.
Mm.
So it was pretty counterintuitive, and how much more they produced in a lot shorter period of time. So I just think it's really important for us to remember. Macki, you even remember this too, when you're like, "Can I take breaks?" And we were
Yeah.
like, Michelle and I were like, "You haven't been," and then we felt bad. But it's, I just think it's really important to take breaks, but also my encouragement to you guys is first take the initiative of finding out whatever that methodology works for you to really prioritize. I have my own, happy to share at some point, but that allows me to really have my week mapped out pretty, it's never going to be, exact at all, but it allows me to have a really good cadence. And then if you find yourself getting stuck, just make it a habit to pick up the phone to either a teammate or myself to just go, "It's what I'm kind of thinking, but what are do you have any insights?" Right. So just to make it a habit to kind of like constantly be training yourself to just be thinking, managing priorities, because it'll make things so much easier. And quite frankly, you'll be able to have a tremendous amount of impact if you keep doing that and not get sucked into the busyness mentality. So
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm.
I think I like the multitasking part. I think I remember always used to be everybody's like, "Oh, multitask.
Yeah.
That's how you get stuff done quickly." It's interesting to see, the research showing that it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And even the old pat your head and rub your stomach kind of proves that.
Yeah.
You can't control
Yeah.
your arm. Eventually through muscle memory you might get there, but it's just not possible. Your brain, as complex as your brain is, it's just not that complex.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. The one I wanted to respond to also kind of has to do with the multitasking, but the biggest hurdle that I have whenever it comes to completing tasks is not exactly trying to multitask, but that my brain is just like remembering all of the other things that I have to do. So it's kind of like my brain is trying to multitask and think about whatever else is on my plate and whatever else, like what's the next thing that I'm going to be doing. So I find it like difficult to just focus in on the one task and not think about all the other ones that are coming. But typically for that, it kind of takes a deep breath and a mindset, like to not get myself so bogged over it. But that is typically the biggest struggle that I have with it, is the attempt to multitask.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally.
It's
Well,
yeah. So
I just had one last thing to wrap this up, and then we're good to go. But I read this little like quote. They were saying that important activities have an outcome that leads to achieving your goals, whether they are professional or personal. Urgent activities demand immediate attention and are usually associated with achieving someone else's goals. Urgent activities demand attention because of the consequences of not dealing with them are immediate. And that kind of was relating to that Eisenhower model of like when you're kind of like looking at things, what is urgent, what's important. It's just kind of interesting. I thought that was a really interesting takeaway that the important items are usually lead to achieving your goals, and the urgent are usually someone else's goals. So I just forgot to note that earlier, but I wanted to mention it. So thank you everyone for listening and participating.